Inside Florida state prisons, heat, gangs, and brutality. For most people, Florida is a place of beaches, sunshine, and tourism. But beyond the palm trees and crowded highways exists another Florida, one hidden behind concrete walls, razor wire, and steel doors. Inside some of the state's prisons, temperatures can climb to dangerous levels. Powerful gangs control parts of daily life. Violence can erupt without warning. And for thousands of inmates, survival depends on understanding rules that are never written down. What happens behind those walls is rarely seen by the public. But tonight, we're stepping inside a world where every decision carries consequences, and where a single mistake can change a life forever. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Because what you're about to see reveals a side of Florida that few people ever witness. The Florida prison system. Florida operates one of the largest prison systems in the United States. Across dozens of state institutions, tens of thousands of inmates are housed in facilities ranging from minimum security camps to some of the toughest closed custody prisons in the country. Many arrive with lengthy sentences. Others are serving life terms. Some know they may never walk free again. The prison system stretches across the state, from rural farmland to isolated forests. Some facilities sit far from major cities, making visits difficult for families. For many inmates, the day begins long before sunrise. Lights come on. Count is conducted. Cell doors open. Breakfast follows. Then work assignments, educational programs, maintenance details, kitchen duty, laundry operations, or simply long hours spent inside overcrowded housing units. On paper, the routine appears structured. But beneath that structure exists another reality. An unofficial system. One governed by influence, reputation, alliances, and fear. A system that often matters more than the official rules. And understanding that system can mean the difference between surviving a sentence and becoming another victim inside it. But before we explore the gangs that shape prison life, there is another threat that affects nearly everyone behind these walls. A threat that arrives every summer. And sometimes becomes deadly. The heat. Florida summers are brutal. Outside temperatures regularly climb into the 90s Fahrenheit. Humidity often pushes the heat index much higher. For people living in air-conditioned homes, the heat can be uncomfortable. For inmates confined inside concrete and steel buildings, it can become something else entirely. Many Florida prisons were built decades ago. Most housing units were never designed with modern air conditioning systems. As sunlight pounds roofs throughout the day, cell blocks absorb and trap heat. Inside some dormitories and cells, temperatures can become significantly higher than those recorded outdoors. Imagine dozens, or sometimes hundreds, of people packed into a housing area. Minimal airflow. Metal bunks. Concrete walls. Small windows. Little relief. As afternoon arrives, the environment becomes increasingly oppressive. Sweat soaks clothing. Mattresses become damp. Sleep becomes difficult. Tempers become shorter. Arguments escalate faster. Correctional staff face the same heat, but inmates cannot simply leave the environment. For elderly prisoners, the danger increases dramatically. Those with heart conditions, respiratory illnesses, diabetes, or other health issues face additional risks. Former inmates have described lying awake at night unable to cool down. Some report placing wet towels over their bodies. Others sleep directly on concrete floors seeking cooler surfaces. When temperatures remain elevated day after day, physical discomfort becomes psychological strain. And psychological strain inside prison can be dangerous. Because frustration has a way of finding targets. Sometimes those targets are other inmates. Sometimes staff. Sometimes anyone nearby. What begins as a minor disagreement can quickly become a violent confrontation. And violence inside Florida prisons is not an abstract concept. It is a reality that has shaped the state's correctional history for decades. A world of constant tension. One of the most difficult things for people outside prison to understand is the constant tension. In prison, there is rarely true privacy. Rarely true silence. Rarely true peace. Every interaction matters. Every conversation is observed. Every weakness can be noticed. An inmate may wake up already carrying stress from a conflict that began days earlier. Perhaps a debt remains unpaid. Perhaps an argument occurred in the chow hall. Perhaps rumors are spreading. Perhaps a gang dispute is developing somewhere else in the facility. The uncertainty becomes exhausting. Many prisoners describe living in a state of constant awareness. Watching. Listening. Assessing threats. Avoiding problems. Trying not to become involved in conflicts that don't concern them. Because inside prison, someone else's problem can become your problem in seconds. A fight breaks out. People choose sides. Witnesses become targets. Information spreads. Retaliation follows. The cycle repeats. New arrivals often discover this reality quickly. The first weeks inside can be among the most dangerous. A newcomer enters an environment where everyone else already understands the rules. Rules that aren't written in any handbook. Rules enforced by inmates themselves. Who you talk to. Where you sit. What you owe. What you say. What you don't say. Violating these unwritten rules can create problems before a prisoner even realizes a mistake has been made. And nowhere are those rules more powerful than in the prison gang structure. What happens there reveals an entirely different layer of prison life. The gangs. Prison gangs did not begin in Florida. But like many correctional systems across America, Florida prisons have long dealt with organized inmate groups that exert influence behind bars. Some are based on race. Others on geography. Others on criminal associations formed long before incarceration. Not every inmate joins a gang. Many actively avoid them. But even prisoners with no gang affiliation often find themselves affected by gang politics. Gangs can provide protection. They can offer access to contraband. They can create opportunities. But they also bring obligations. Debts. Conflicts. Violence. An inmate who joins may discover that leaving is not simple. Orders can come from leaders housed in entirely different facilities. Messages move through inmate networks. Influence extends beyond individual prisons. The average person may imagine gangs as constantly fighting. The reality is often more complicated. Many gang members spend considerable effort preventing conflicts that could bring unwanted attention from staff. But when violence does occur, it can happen quickly and with devastating consequences. A disagreement between individuals can escalate into a larger conflict involving multiple groups. A debt can spark retaliation. A perceived insult can trigger violence. A rumor can spread across housing units in hours. Correctional officers work to monitor these developments, identify potential threats, and prevent larger incidents before they occur. Sometimes they succeed. Sometimes events move faster than intelligence gathering. And when control begins to slip, prisons can become extremely dangerous places. Yet even gangs are not the only power structure operating inside Florida prisons. Another system influences nearly every aspect of daily survival. The prison economy. And what happens there may surprise many people. The underground economy. Money works differently in prison. Most inmates possess very little. Yet an entire economy exists behind bars. Commissary items become currency. Instant coffee. Snack foods. Hygiene products. Stamps. Phone time. Simple items gain value because access is limited. Debts become serious matters. A borrowed item may seem insignificant to an outsider. Inside prison, failing to repay that debt can create major problems. Some inmates operate small businesses. Haircuts. Artwork. Legal assistance. Cleaning services. Workout coaching. Others become involved in prohibited activities. Contraband has long been a challenge for correctional institutions across America. Cell phones. Tobacco. Drugs. Unauthorized items can generate enormous profits. The risks are substantial. Disciplinary reports. Loss of privileges. Additional criminal charges. Yet demand continues. Where demand exists, supply often follows. The underground economy creates opportunities, but also dangers. Robberies occur. Extortion occurs. Manipulation occurs. And many prisoners learn that the safest path is avoiding unnecessary debts altogether. Because once someone owes more than they can repay, the consequences can become severe. And in prison, consequences rarely arrive with warning. The officers. No prison functions without correctional officers. Their role is extraordinarily difficult. Every day they supervise individuals who may be angry, frustrated, desperate, or violent. They work in environments where a routine day can become a crisis in moments. Most interactions are uneventful. Counts. Movements. Searches. Meal distribution. Escort duties. But officers must remain alert at all times. A simple conversation may reveal valuable intelligence. An unusual gathering of inmates may indicate trouble. A sudden silence can sometimes be more concerning than noise. Staff shortages have affected correctional systems across the country, including Florida. Fewer officers can mean greater pressure on existing personnel. Long shifts. Increased responsibilities. Greater fatigue. For officers, maintaining order requires a balance between authority and professionalism. For inmates, relationships with staff vary widely. Some interactions remain respectful. Others become adversarial. Trust is often limited. Suspicion is common. Yet both groups occupy the same environment every day. And when serious incidents occur, officers are usually the first people responding. Because prison violence does not happen only in movies. It happens in real life. And sometimes it unfolds with frightening speed. When violence erupts. Most days inside prison pass without major incidents. But when violence erupts, everything changes. A fight may begin with a single punch. A disagreement over property. An unpaid debt. A gang dispute. A personal grudge. Within seconds, alarms sound. Officers move toward the disturbance. Housing units lock down. Medical staff prepare for casualties. Information becomes fragmented. Witnesses often remain silent. Rumors spread faster than facts. Investigators work to determine what happened. Retaliation becomes a concern. Prison administrators must restore order while preventing further violence. Some incidents involve only 2 people. Others affect entire housing units. In extreme situations, large-scale disturbances require significant resources to control. These events leave lasting impacts. Victims carry physical scars. Witnesses carry memories. Entire facilities may experience heightened restrictions afterward. And sometimes the aftermath becomes worse than the incident itself. Because punishment inside prison can dramatically alter daily life. Punishment inside prison. Prison is already punishment. Yet even within prison, additional punishment exists. Disciplinary systems are designed to address rule violations. Consequences vary depending on severity. Loss of visitation. Loss of recreation. Loss of commissary privileges. Loss of gain time. Housing restrictions. Administrative segregation. For many inmates, segregation represents one of the harshest experiences. Life becomes increasingly isolated. Movement is restricted. Human contact decreases. Days become repetitive. Time seems slower. Mental strain increases. Supporters argue segregation can improve safety by separating dangerous individuals. Critics argue extended isolation can worsen psychological problems. The debate continues nationwide. But for inmates experiencing those conditions firsthand, theory matters less than reality. Every day becomes a test of patience. A test of discipline. A test of mental endurance. And not everyone passes that test successfully. Yet some prisoners face a different challenge altogether. A sentence so long that release may never come. Life without hope? For some prisoners, the hardest part is not the violence. Not the heat. Not the gangs. It is time. Years become decades. Birthdays pass. Parents die. Children grow into adults. Entire generations change outside prison walls. Some inmates entered prison before smartphones existed. Before social media. Before much of the modern world took shape. Now they live in institutions that continue operating according to routines largely unchanged by technological progress. The psychological impact can be immense. Hope becomes difficult to maintain. Future plans become harder to imagine. Motivation fades. Yet many still search for purpose. Education programs. Religious activities. Vocational training. Mentorship. Personal growth. Some dedicate themselves to helping younger inmates avoid mistakes. Others focus on maintaining relationships with family. Even in difficult environments, people continue searching for meaning. Because without meaning, time itself can become a punishment beyond any sentence imposed by a court. And nowhere is that struggle more visible than among those approaching old age behind bars. Surviving Florida prison. Ask former inmates how they survived Florida prison, and many provide similar answers. Stay out of debt. Avoid unnecessary conflicts. Watch more than you speak. Respect boundaries. Learn the rules quickly. Choose associates carefully. Control emotions. Think before acting. These principles sound simple. Inside prison, they are not. Every day presents new challenges. New personalities. New pressures. New opportunities to make mistakes. Survival often depends less on physical strength and more on judgment. The ability to recognize danger before it arrives. The ability to walk away from conflict. The ability to remain disciplined when emotions push toward confrontation. Some prisoners master those skills. Others never do. And the difference can shape the entire course of a sentence. The first 24 hours. For many inmates, the most stressful day of their sentence is not years later. It is the first day. The moment the prison gates close behind them. The moment they realize jail is over and prison has begun. New arrivals are typically processed through reception centers where they undergo medical screenings, classification interviews, background reviews, and evaluations that help determine where they will eventually be housed. To prison administrators, it is a routine process. To the inmate, it can feel like entering another world. The uncertainty is overwhelming. Where will they be sent? Who will they live with? What kind of prison is waiting for them? Will they be safe? Most have heard stories long before arriving. Stories from former inmates. Stories from television. Stories from family members. Some are exaggerated. Others are not. A newcomer quickly learns that reputation matters. Every prison develops its own culture. Some institutions are known for violence. Others for gang activity. Others for contraband. Others for difficult living conditions. In reception units, inmates often spend days or weeks waiting for placement. During that time, they begin observing. Who appears confident? Who seems nervous? Who already knows the system? Who should be avoided? Those observations become survival tools. Because once they reach their permanent institution, they will have far less time to adjust. And what happens during those first weeks can determine the rest of their sentence. The cell. For someone who has never experienced incarceration, it is difficult to imagine how much life can shrink. A prison cell may become the center of existence. A place where inmates sleep, eat, read, think, argue, worry, dream, and wait. Hours become days. Days become years. Many Florida prisons utilize a combination of dormitory-style housing and traditional cells. Conditions vary significantly between institutions. Some housing units contain dozens of inmates in open bay environments. Others involve locked cells shared by one or more prisoners. Regardless of the layout, privacy is almost non-existent. Personal space becomes one of the most valuable commodities inside prison. A bunk. A locker. A small area around a bed. That may be the only territory an inmate truly controls. Conflicts frequently begin over space, noise, cleanliness, property, respect. Something as simple as touching another person's belongings can create tension. Inside prison, these issues are magnified. Because when people cannot leave, every problem remains trapped with them. For days, weeks, sometimes months. And eventually, pressure builds. The question is never whether pressure exists. The question is where it will be released. Contraband, the battle prisons never win. Every prison in America fights the same battle. Contraband. And despite decades of effort, no correctional system has ever completely eliminated it. The reason is simple. Where demand exists, supply follows. Florida prisons have faced ongoing challenges involving prohibited items. Cell phones remain among the most sought after. To an inmate, a phone represents something powerful. Connection. Communication. Access to the outside world. The ability to bypass monitored prison systems. That value creates incentive. Drugs represent another persistent challenge. Their presence fuels debt, violence, manipulation, overdoses. Entire underground markets emerge around their distribution. Administrators invest significant resources attempting to stop the flow. Searches, canine units, intelligence gathering, surveillance, mail screening, technological detection systems. Yet contraband continues appearing. Some items enter through visitors. Some through corrupted staff. Some through increasingly creative smuggling methods. Each discovery becomes evidence of a larger reality. Prisons are designed to separate inmates from society. But they are never completely isolated from it. Outside influences constantly find ways inside. And sometimes those influences create consequences that affect entire institutions. The psychological weight. When people discuss prison, they often focus on physical danger. The fights. The gangs. The assaults. But many former inmates describe another challenge as equally difficult. The mental burden. Prison removes freedom. But it also removes unpredictability. Days become structured. Routine becomes unavoidable. Every morning resembles the one before it. Many prisoners struggle with monotony. Others struggle with regret. Some become consumed by memories. Others fear the future. Mental health professionals working in correctional systems face complex challenges. They encounter individuals dealing with depression, anxiety, trauma, addiction, and severe mental illness. Some entered prison already carrying these burdens. Others developed them during incarceration. The environment itself can be psychologically demanding. Limited privacy. Constant noise. Restricted movement. Separation from family. Uncertainty about the future. For inmates serving lengthy sentences, these pressures accumulate year after year. Some adapt. Some deteriorate. Some alternate between both. And perhaps the most difficult aspect is that prison rarely pauses. Regardless of what someone is experiencing internally, the institution continues moving forward. Counts continue. Meals continue. Work assignments continue. Life goes on. Whether an inmate feels ready for it or not. Lockdowns. One word can instantly change prison life. Lockdown. When a prison enters lockdown status, normal operations may stop almost immediately. Movement becomes restricted. Programs are suspended. Recreation ends. Meals may be delivered directly to housing units. Investigations begin. Lockdowns occur for many reasons. Major fights. Weapons discoveries. Gang conflicts. Security threats. Staff assaults. Institution-wide searches. Sometimes they last hours. Sometimes days. Sometimes longer. For administrators, lockdowns provide an opportunity to restore control and gather information. For inmates, they can be frustrating and stressful. Tension rises. Rumors spread. Information becomes scarce. No one knows exactly when restrictions will end. The atmosphere changes. Even facilities that normally operate smoothly can feel entirely different during lockdown periods. And when large-scale incidents trigger those lockdowns, the entire prison population feels the impact. Even inmates who had nothing to do with the original event. Release day. While some prisoners will never leave, many eventually reach release day. For years, they imagine it, plan for it, count down toward it. Yet when it finally arrives, reality is often more complicated than expected. The outside world may have changed dramatically. Technology has evolved. Family relationships have shifted. Entire neighborhoods look different. Former inmates frequently describe feeling both excited and overwhelmed. Freedom returns. But so does responsibility. Bills, employment, housing, decisions, temptations. Many leave prison carrying determination to build a different future. Others struggle to adjust. Recidivism remains a challenge across the United States. The transition from prison to society is rarely simple. Success depends on many factors. Support systems, employment opportunities, education, personal choices, community resources. For some, release becomes a genuine second chance. For others, it becomes another chapter in a cycle they cannot escape. And that reality raises one final question. What exactly is prison supposed to accomplish? Florida's prison system contains thousands of stories. Some involve violence. Some involve survival. Some involve redemption. Others involve tragedy. The public often sees prisons through headlines. Riots. Escapes. Assaults. Investigations. But daily life behind the walls is usually quieter, more complicated, and far more human. Each day begins with counts and security procedures. Each day ends with locked doors. Between those moments, an entire hidden society continues operating beyond public view. A society shaped by heat, gangs, authority, routine, fear, and resilience. For correctional officers, it is a workplace unlike any other. For inmates, it is a reality that can last years, or a lifetime. And while the walls separate prison from the outside world, the questions remain connected to all of us. How should societies punish crime? How should they balance security and humanity? Can people truly change? And if they can, what role should prison play in that process? Those debates continue far beyond Florida. But inside the state's prisons, another day is already beginning. Another count. Another shift. Another summer afternoon under relentless heat. And for thousands of men and women behind those walls, survival remains the most important task of all. Behind every prison wall is a story most people will never see. A story of power, survival, punishment, and sometimes redemption. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary informative, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the world's most notorious prisons, criminals, and criminal justice stories. And let us know in the comments, which prison should we explore next? Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next documentary.